We are now approaching Keynsham.
Oh, that's better. Hello everyone, Passionate Piscator here. Little train journey from Bristol to Keynsham. Now, there's a little teeny tiny little stretch of the Kennet and Avon Canal here, and I'm hoping today to target a species which is unloved and unlooked for, and often, disregarded. The bleak. The humble little bleak. And I'm going to see how many I can get, and hopefully see if I can get some decent sized ones. Maybe like a magical 2 ounces or something like that. It's highly unlikely, but I do love catching those mini species, and today is going to be all about that. Let's see if I can find some lovely shining bleak. Better. Got myself all settled in one of the only sort of available spots on here to fish. It's only a teeny stretch of the Kennet and Avon Canal. The Bristol Avon is just the other side of that bridge, and it runs all the way around the other side, and the lock is just in front of me. You can see it right there. So it's tiny little section. I suppose it's more of a technicality you can fish it really, but if it's fishable during the closed season, I'm on it. And it is indeed the closed season, so no river fishing allowed. However, it looks pretty good. It's not ideal, what I would call ideal for bleak fishing. I like bleak fishing to be on a nice sunny day. The fish will come up to the surface and you can see them pecking at the top of the water. But I've looked over this bridge a fair few times. There's always a few bleak milling around down here, so I'm hoping there's going to be a few. However, what I have just done is found the depth of the water, because I probably will head down there at some point, feed up a little spot for, I don't know, gudgeon, roach, perch, who knows. I've got some worms and I've got some maggots with me, but I've just set up all my gear, but I'm just going to take it all apart and put on it's my rudd fishing float, but it's going to be my bleak fishing float today, and see if I can snatch a few out, hopefully a few sizable ones. There's only one thing for it, I suppose. Just set up, let's take it all apart and set up again. What else would you do? Okay, so I've changed my rig from the waggler float, which I've now plumbed the depth of, and I've left a little white mark on the tip of my rod just so I know precisely where the depth is for later on, and should I wish to fish on the bottom. And I've changed to what I call my rudd rig. Now, this was a float that I made because I make all of my floats for a bit of reed, and it was the idea of it, if I can get it in shot, basically was so that when you're lift method fishing for like tench or crucians or something, it's not got any eyes on it, just like a lift float essentially. But it's actually a lovely little controller for surface fishing as well. Rather than it fishing in the water like that, I'll be fishing it so it's laying flat on the surface. It's got a little orange indicator so that I can use it as a float, but when it's on the top it'll just sit there. And the good thing is, and the thing I find great with rudd fishing particularly, is that you can adjust obviously on the bands the height of the hook, the line, which goes down to wherever you want. So actually, if I wanted to, I could fish, like an inch under the surface. The fish are feeding right on the top, which quite often they are. It's absolutely devastating as a rudd float and a rudd rig This also provides a little bit of casting weight. You can also put a few shot just on the line here, as long as it doesn't affect the float, just to get that extra bit of casting weight as well. It's more for marginal work, and it's actually really good for if you can see individual fish, pinpointing them and casting right in front of them and making sure they take it. Yeah, so I find it absolutely devastating. It is just a piece of reed which I varnished essentially and put 2 bands on. Anybody could make one of these. I am anybody, and I certainly have done it. But yeah, devastating for rudd, and hopefully it's going to be devastating for the bleak. And as they move up and down the water, I can just pull the line easy enough. As I say, change the depth. There's only one thing for it. See if the plan works, I suppose. And as if by magic, in an instant, a little bleak. I don't think I'm going to have any trouble catching bleak here today. Most anglers get very annoyed with them, because they are little bait robbers. But if we're going for them on purpose, it could be absolutely fantastic. This one's very lively. I don't know if I'd better show him on the camera. Probably not even worth it, he's so tiny. But I suppose every fish is worth it really, isn't it? As you can see, little tiny bleak. I think he's going to flip. Yeah, it's right, I've got the net here. Not that you really need a net, but this, it just fall into my lap easy enough probably. Right, let's pop him back, and hopefully I can catch one slightly bigger than like 0.01 of an ounce. It's going to be a war of attrition. Didn't take me long to get a more sizable bleak. I'm going to pop him onto my weigh scales. These are my miniature fish weigh scales, just to see how big he is. 1 point, what are you going to give me? 1.14 ounces. Not bad, but not a specimen. Discovered there's a lot more to catching these bleak than meets the eye. They're moving up and down the water column quite a lot. I think the more fish I catch, the more they're spooking, the more they're going down a little bit lower. But I'm not in any danger of blanking today. In fact, they're coming a bit thick and fast. However, I'm missing a lot more bites, or I was missing a lot more bites, but I'm actually catching. So what I've discovered is, rather than hooking a single maggot on the hook like you would normally, just by nicking it, what I'm actually doing is threading the maggot on the hook a little bit more. If you can see, they're actually threading a lot more than maggot on. I think because they're only tiny fish for the most part. They're struggling to get the maggot into their mouths. The other thing I'm doing, I'm also chasing the fish up and down the water column, so I'm raising the float up a bit, bringing it down a little bit. But the other thing is, they do seem to be enjoying the red maggot more than they are the white. I've got red and whites. I always get red and whites, or at least the majority being reds. A pint and a half of reds and a half a pint of whites. I don't expect to use them all today. Haven't caught any real big ones, only up to just an ounce and a bit, but I'm certainly getting plenty of them, and that's a good thing. It's a war of attrition to get a specimen bleak, I feel, and I'm fully prepared for that today. Pop me back in there. Another thing you must keep remembering to do is feeding, just like a pinch of maggots, little and often, just to keep their interest, and also to try and keep them higher up in the water. Otherwise I may as well just be using a waggler float and fishing on the bottom. But the little Rudd float I'm using seems to be doing a good job. The only thing that's interrupting me today from catching a lot of fish is passers-by, but I don't mind that. I like having a good chat to people who know the water and fellow anglers. Sometimes you find out some really good bits of information, like, oh, this bit of river here, if you fish there you're likely to catch chub, and use this bait and things like that. And that's always really good. And finding out information like that off of people really makes any fishing session worthwhile if you're fishing in a place which is a bit more public, like on this canal. Again, lots of teeny tiny bleak. I'm just missing still plenty of bites, but I think I've nailed the technique to trying to reduce that at least. Sun's come out, it's absolutely glorious. It's still pretty chilly, but yeah, the only sort of downside is having this bridge going across the canal with the cars going back and forth. Very reminiscent of me fishing on the feeder canal, this is. But any day fishing, it's a good day fishing, and today is shaping up to be a good day. Sure signs you've got bleak in your swim. Little teeny tiny ripples appearing on the water surface, like them. That's where the bleak are coming up because they are surface feeders, and just taking little tiny flies that are falling onto the water surface. Nightmare. Got a lot of scum come floating through on the water now. All sorts of twigs and leaves. There's a little carrier bag in there. It's made fishing on the surface a little bit tricky because the line is getting caught in all the bits of floating detritus. However, it has seemed to have brought the bleak up to investigate among the twigs and stuff. There's loads of bleak down here. As you sprinkle in a few maggots, which I'm just about to do now. What you can see is little flickers of silver shooting through the water. And in the Complete Angler that Isaac Wharton wrote back in the day, he did write that a bleak is a fish ever in motion. And that is extraordinarily true even today. They are always flitting about and scooting about, often quite visibly if you can get them up on the surface. God, this scum is just driving me mad. There's a lot of grass clippings here as well that people are obviously getting a right pickle. But people are often quite rude about the bleak, as much as they are about any small species of fish. But I think a matchman's dream if you could get a shoal of these going on a match. Though they're not particularly big, you could get a vast quantity of these into a keep net if you fished for them better than I am. Which is not too hard because I've got a bit of a breeze going round and it's tangling the line a little bit. Oh well. Oh well. Here we go. Bleak themselves are quite delicate little fish. They look very much like a roach or a dace. But they're actually really delicate. The scales on them are paper thin, little tiny teeny scales, and if you're not careful when you handle them, quite a lot of the scales can fall off. It doesn't do any real damage to the fish, imagine they must lose a lot of scales, just even being in the water, flitting around like they do. But back in 1840s, in Paris, they used to catch a lot of bleak and take off all the scales and use them. I've got a bit of a tangle now. I think we used to grind them up to make sort of a, I don't know, like an essence, I think it was like an essence they called it, like a paste, from memory this is. And they used to use it in metallic paints to make it shinier, because the scales are super shiny, in makeup, nail polish. So it has had in the past some practical use. I imagine nowadays they don't do that. There's probably lots of synthetic stuff they can use. Tell you what is driving me mad is all this stuff. Go on, blow through. What a nice good breeze to blow it all off the surface. Lost my maggot. Thread another red one on. Let's ping it out. Oh, God, I managed to hook myself in the finger. At least I've hooked something big today, and it's me. But as you probably saw earlier, me weighing a slightly bigger bleak on my scales. Here we are, my little fishing scales. These are my mini fishing scales. Obviously the big scales don't register little tiny fish so well, so you can't weigh them. I always, wherever I go fishing, even if I'm fishing for catfish or carp, which would never be able to put on them, I will always take my mini scales, because you never can be sure if you're going to catch a mini species of fish. I would say a good 99.9999 recurring % of anglers have caught a specimen, not that this is a specimen, but specimen mini species of fish, and thrown them back into the water completely unheeded. They've probably gone home and someone said to me, "Have you caught any fish? Caught any decent fish today?" No, nah, just a few little bleak, a few little gudgeon, not worth it. But I guarantee that they've thrown back specimen-sized gudgeon and bleak in their time, just by simply not weighing them, not even having the scales to weigh them. So I will always carry them, because you never know you're going to get a little minnow, and it could be a specimen fish. Hello there.
Hello, how was fishing going?
Well, you could say it's been a little bleak. As you might be able to tell from that little bream and the eel, I've just changed over to my waggler float. I'm now fishing on the bottom. Not that the bleak fishing slowed down any. I just thought, well, I've been feeding that swim now with maggots for, well, all morning really. Must be about 3 hours now. I've had a ton of bleak. Nothing huge, nothing near the specimen one I was hoping for, but you never can tell. I've never fished this water before, so I thought, yeah, there's always a chance, always aim big. But I've had a great time. But yeah, I just thought I'd give it a little bit of a change. I've just rigged up, plopped them in, and yeah, so a little eel and a little bream just to start the session. Maybe a few gudgeon and roach down there, who knows? Now, of course, the downside to catching eels is your hands end up looking like this, just completely crusted with eel slime. Look at it. Oh, nasty. But, you know, that shows a sign of a good day's fishing most times. Yeah. My faithful little friend, little Tommy Ruff. Again, look at the beauty of that fish. Look at the speckles and spots on him. He looks a bit cross, he's got his fins out. Be careful, of course, of the spines at the top. And there are little spines on these gill rakers too, so you have to be very careful handling them. Look at that. What a stunning fish. Pop him back. Oh, little dibble. There we go. What have we got now? It's hard to tell, you never really know when you catch a silverfish. Could be a bleak, could be a roach. This one's a little roach. Let me trust the old discorder. I always keep it under my hat. When it's not there, I always miss it. Tiny little roach. There we go. Beautiful. I'm having to feed quite heavily now with the maggots. Honestly, I chuck a little small amount in and it just disappears. You can see all the bleak rushing to the surface and you can see every individual maggot gone, 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 gone. I reckon probably out of about 30 maggots, one might get to the bottom. But there are fish coming in for them because I'm catching the ruff and they're a bottom feeding fish, and the bream and they're a bottom feeding fish, and obviously the eels are too. Putting two wrigglers on, just sinking it down rather than chucking the things, the main quantity of the bait in. It's just right in front of me, it's not too far away. I've got a float on, but I haven't had to cast it at all. Super sensitive float. It's mostly because I know those eels are down there. I want to see every teeny tiny indication so that I can hook them in the mouth rather than having them swallow the hook. Fish care is ultimately the most important part of what I'm doing today. No matter how big the fish is, it still deserves the care. Well, I wish it could be Bleakmas every day, when the bleak starts swimming and the bleak begin to play. Well, I wish it could be Bleakmas every day. Oh, let the bells ring out for Bleakmas. Ooh. So I'm back on the bleak again. I couldn't resist. The main aim for today anyway. I had my little bit of fun fishing on the bottom. I had a nice eel, a few little roach, one little dace, a few little ruff, and a bream. Oh, and plenty more bleak. But the maggots were getting destroyed on the way down to the bottom to greet all those lovely fish. So I've put on a little semi-surface rig and I'm going to plug away at some of these bleak again. Some of them look like pretty good fish too. If I can get one, I'm aiming for ones over an ounce now. There are millions of ones a lot smaller than that. I don't think there's much in the way I can be doing to try and finagle out the bigger ones. Maybe 2 maggots on the hook, but they're just not hitting the bait properly. They're getting so many bites, but no takes. So one maggot it is. Keep hammering away at them. Woo! But they are gorgeous little fish. If you take the time to look at them, they really are gorgeous. shiny, beautiful fish. If I get a decent sized one, perhaps we'll take a closer look. This one is definitely not an ounce. As you can see, they look very much like a roach, much more pointed nose. If I can just use my thumb, you'll see that they've got a much longer bottom jaw, and that's for taking food off the surface. Beautiful colours. Their scales are so delicate, they do come off. Always try and have a slightly wetted hand if you're holding them. They've got a lovely sort of yellow stripe that runs along the top all the way down to the tail, sort of just distinguishing that silvery base to the sort of bluey green top, and the fin is set quite far back, but they look like a little sprat. Indeed, they are called sometimes freshwater sprats. Beautiful little fish. And as we're back bleak fishing again, there's only one thing we need. We're gonna need a montage! Montage! The end of the day for me. Hopefully that goes some way to showing why I just absolutely love bleak fishing. They may be very small and very humble, but they are very obliging. The absolute perfect fish to get young people involved with angling. Get your kids down there, even for like half an hour or so, just for a little bit of maggot or bread or a little bit of worm or something. They will take near enough everything you plop into the water just under the surface, and they're easy to find. You just look for the little ripples on the top. Did I come anywhere close to catching that specimen bleak that I was after? No, sadly not. But as I always say, if you don't go, you don't know. And now I know I didn't catch one. But there's always another time. There's always, as you see, plenty more bleak to catch. Well, that's it for me for today. Be passionate Piscator. I've had a lovely time catching all of those. I mean, it must be hundreds of bleak, but I also caught an eel, I caught a couple of bream, I caught a few little roach, I even caught a little dace and a lovely little ruff as well, just to top it off. I have been the passionate Piscator. Click like, subscribe, and I will see you again another time. Thank you for watching. Bye!